Hello, creative souls, word witches, writers. I'm so happy that you've tuned in. Thanks for being here. In this video, I'm going to talk about the new moon in Scorpio on November 1st. Happy Samhain, everybody. And how it might impact, influence, and possibly benefit your writing practice. For this video, I've consulted Nadia Shah. She's an astrologer that I consult on a regular basis, and I will put a link to her channel and her video on the new moon in the description. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Johnny. I'm a retired adjunct writing professor, and I currently teach fiction writing and screenwriting to adults in custody. I call myself a word witch, and I believe I'm on this earth to heal the world through stories. Thank you so much for your likes, shares, and subscribes so that I can grow my channel and do more on my quest to build a community of like-minded creatives who embrace the power of story to heal. I want to give you a quick update on the Alchemy of Writing course. Guess what? It's finally finished. I did it. And Suzanne, one of my helpers, is working in the background to help me get it all uploaded so it can be available to you very, very soon. It will be available on my website for $188, or if you want it free, all you have to do is become a member of the Alchemy of Writing membership group. Right now, the founding member price is $18. It will go up once the course is available, and I'll give you about a week's notice so that you'll have time. Once the course is available, the membership group will be $28 a month. So keep that in mind if you're interested at all. I would love to have you in the group. So now let's get to the subject of this video, the new moon in Scorpio. Nadia says that this new moon is speaking in harmony with Saturn. So here's what that means. With Scorpio in the mix, we understand what's going on at the core, which will allow us to effect deeper change moving forward. So the core of what? Well, ourselves, our beliefs, our practices. As this relates to your writing practice, it could mean that you're about to make a fundamental change in your life in general that will make a lasting change in your writing practice. In the Alchemy of Writing course, I talk about conjuring and nurturing your writing practice in 4 modules. So there's planning, there's scheduling, there's perspective, also known as mindset, and commitment. In the planning and scheduling modules, I get very, very detailed about ways you can view your life, your schedule, and your time to shift responsibilities and bank time so that you have more of it. So this might mean asking for help or support from the people in your life or the people that you live with if you share space with other people. Are they respectful of your impulse to write, of your desire to write? And I mean truly respectful, not just with their words, but with their actions. New moons are generally, we think of them as being about new beginnings, new chapters. And as Nadia says, these new chapters can sometimes just come about organically. So think about what's beginning again for you, what's starting anew, what feels new and different. And think about where Scorpio is in your chart. So for example, my moon is Scorpio, that's in my 4th house, which is all about home and family. And so I don't know what that means for me as I make this video. I'll think about that more. But I live by myself with my cat, and there aren't a lot of people in my life these days that impact my practice on the day-to-day, but there are obligations I have accepted for myself that do take more time for my writing than I would like. And there is one that I will be regrettably letting go of in the near future. And I won't say what that is yet. I will let you know in an upcoming video, but there is something that I've decided to let go of that means very much to me, because it does impact my writing practice. It impacts my whole life, my ability to live where I want. So I'll share more about that in the near future. So think about this for yourself. Where is Scorpio in your chart? And if you don't know, you can go to, there are plenty of websites online. You just Google free astrological chart, put in your info, and you will get a chart. And you can see where Scorpio is, and then figure out the house that it's in, and then Google what does the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, whatever house represent in astrology, and it will tell you. And then see how that aligns or doesn't with your writing practice, how it might impact it. We're talking about really being able to get to the core of things, and so Nadia says that with this new moon, we'll be able to see how to make a change within us so that the outward change can manifest. And that's really where it all starts, right? I mean, sometimes, granted, things happen externally that impact us internally and can change our life. But right now we have this energy where we can really look at the core of things, look at the core of our wants and needs and desires, and then look at what's going on outside ourselves. and see how those things align or don't. And then based on those core wants, needs, and desires that we have, making changes, really realizing what it is we want. So for me, I want more time to write. And so I'm about to create it. And I hope you will too, if that's what you need around your writing. Nadia says there might be some difficult truth that we're wrestling with right now that will inform this core need, this change that we're about to make. So it's somewhat like finding the answer to a mystery and then finding the strength to make the change so. She also says that with Saturn in the mix, the changes we make will be lasting. So that's good to know, right? So really, really think deeply and clearly about what changes you want in your writing life. And as I mentioned earlier, in the Alchemy of Writing course, I really do take you deep to think about some things. The purpose of this is to really get you down to your core so that you can get real and get honest with yourself and with the people in your life about how much your writing means to you, or doesn't. There's another really interesting aspect that's happening just a few days after the new moon, so it's still under the light of the new moon. And there's this thing called a kite formation. So the planets arrange themselves in such a way that it actually forms the shape of a kite in the sky. And this happens when several planets are in harmony and two planets are in opposition. So according to Nadia, we want to look at the anchoring principles of the kite. So what's on the opposing ends of it? Because it's that opposition that forms the kite. In this case, it's Pluto and Mars. So these are two planets with a whole lot of power. And if you don't know, Pluto is Scorpio's modern ruling planet. Mars is Scorpio's ancient ruling planet. And the energy of this kite is pointing toward Mars. So the tip of the kite is pointing at Mars. So Mars is receiving the energy of this formation. Mars sits across from Pluto once every 2 years. And what this can do is help us understand how we understand or interpret Scorpio energy and how we want to move forward with it. So it comes down to really what we're willing to fight for, based on what we think needs to change. In terms of your writing, this might mean that maybe, possibly, you have to work a bit harder to get the change that you want, to establishing the kind of practice that you want. This might mean that you'll need to explain to the people in your life just how much writing means to you. That it's not this fun, frivolous little, I'll squeeze it in when I can proposition. That it's something you actually need, like the air that you breathe. And again, there's a module in the Alchemy of Writing course that will help you do this. It will help you sort out how to explain to people what to ask them for so that you can have the practice that you want and deserve. And this energy can also make it more obvious how to bring forth this kind of power that we get with Pluto and Mars, and how to use this power in a way that's rooted in reverence and respect, and a deep understanding of how power can be both a force of healing and a force of destruction. And then deciding for ourselves how we want to use that energy and what we want our part in it to be. To make this even more potent, this opposition between Pluto and Mars is happening at the very end of the signs that they're in. So Pluto is at the end of Capricorn at the 29th degree, and Mars is at the very end of Cancer at the 29th degree. So that means that it makes these powerful aspects, these powerful energies, that much more powerful. So it's like this big oomph from the universe. And Pluto is also wrapping up a transit that it started in 2008 when it first went into Capricorn. So it's like we're turning a huge page in our lives individually and in the collective. And this really, in a lot of ways, is how we view the self at the core, how we view our beliefs at the core, and how we view our practices at the core. So how do you view yourself? How do you view your writing practice? And how do you view your beliefs around writing and the practice of it and its importance to you? Is it a thing you have a deep desire to do but you're not doing because there isn't enough time? Is it that too many people have staked a claim on you in their lives and it's preventing you from writing? Do you have too many voices that belong to other people in your head that are telling you things about writing and about your ability to write, your right to write, that you have believed for way too long? Is it other people that's preventing you from writing, or is it you that's preventing you from writing? I'm not trying to be harsh or point the finger, and at the same time, I hope you'll really think deeply about this. Did you just hear what happened? I don't know if you can hear in the background. While I was talking about really figuring out where the so-called problem lies in your perceived inability to write, there was an alarm going off outside. And when I asked you to really deeply think about it, then the alarm went off. So, I don't know, maybe it's a sign. Nadia says this is a time to also look at power structures and systems of power that seem all-encompassing and systemic, systems that appear to be larger than us. Well, considering this is a few days right before an election, a very important election, feels like the most important election of my lifetime. And now the alarm's going off again. In terms of writing, we might also think about the power structures that exist in the writing world. Because even though self-publishing does exist, and we all have social media that can help us market, the big house publishers still wield a ton of power over us. They decide who gets to be read and heard and seen and who doesn't. And I don't know what that means for any of us, for you individually. I don't know what it means for me, but it's something to think about and really consider as a writer, how can I best get my words out into the world? And I think that's something we all have to decide for ourselves. And so when we think about Pluto being at the height of its power in the last degree of Capricorn, so Pluto's its most potent, and that Capricorn is about culmination, Nadia describes this as jacked up Capricorn energy. And then Pluto amps it up even more. So what needs to culminate in your life? And this could be as simple as a habit. And sometimes I know habits are not simple to break, but it could be something, a personal habit that you have that's interfering with your writing. It could be something much bigger. And I'm not suggesting this, but I want to tell you a story. I made a film years ago. It was a feature film that I wrote, directed, and produced called Found Objects. And it got stuck in distribution, as a lot of indie films do, and never went anywhere. But the making of it, and I had a few screenings of it, was very eye-opening for me about how powerful the stories we tell are in people's lives. And I'll give you 2 examples. First, I'll tell you basically what the story was about. It was a woman who felt caught in the domestic sphere. So she was married and had kids, and she was a creative. And because she was living in this environment, it had kind of not sucked the creativity out of her, but it stole her from herself. It stole her time, her essence, everything. And the opening scene is their house burning down. She goes to live in a motel with 2 of her kids and discovers that she quite likes it because she's free of all of those domestic duties. And just before the fire, she told her husband she was leaving him. And so the house burning down was just really kind of a metaphor for the nuclear family being dismantled. And people thought she was nuts, but she realized how important her creative impulse was to her. And so she decided to stay living in the motel, and she created a life for herself. It was her quest to reclaim herself as a creative, as a woman who creates. So I show this film a few different places, and I had one person write to me. And basically, I will say this, basically the film is about being true to yourself, understanding who you are at your core, and being true to that, regardless of what all the rules in society tell you. Well, I had a man write to me and tell me, he said, I've never told this to anyone. This is the first time that I'm admitting that I'm trans. And I thought, wow, okay, this film wasn't even about that, but just this general notion that we really need to get clear at our core about who we are and what we want and need. And I was so touched by that, and it meant so much to me that he felt he could write and tell me that. And I wish I knew now what he was doing and how he's doing. The other example is a woman who came to 2 of the screenings. After the second one, she came up outside in the lobby of the theater and talked to me and told me that she wanted to talk to me after the first time she watched it, but she couldn't because she had to go sit in her car and cry. And she said she cried for 30 minutes. And she went home, and when she saw there was going to be a second screening a few months later, she came again. And that's when she told me the story about going out to her car and crying. She went home that night, and then later, a couple months later, she wrote to me and said she realized that even though she loved her partner, that if she was really going to live the creative life that she wanted, she couldn't live with him any longer. And so I'm telling you these stories not to suggest that you need to get rid of people in your life. I'm not saying that at all. But the point of this is that when we really get to the core of who we are and what we want, and we write from that place, we put stories out into the world that impact people so deeply that they make grand changes in their lives. That's why I want you to write, because we can heal the world when we do that. So what do you need to wrap up? What do you need to culminate? What is over and done with in history? What doesn't belong anymore? I hope that you'll spend some quality time thinking about this. What's worth fighting for as it pertains to your writing? It's time to get really fierce, I think, about what you want in your writing life, your writing practice. And I'll tell you this, we have to do it for ourselves. No one else will. It's just a fact. Nadia says that the ancients considered Mars exalted when it's in Capricorn. So when we think of its current placement in Cancer, which sits directly across from Capricorn, this could also bring more energy of us needing to work a bit harder to get what we want. And this could have to do with finding healthier forms of power in the collective and in our lives individually. So if making changes in your writing practice, even though you know they're the thing to do, might feel arduous, but stick to what you know is true for you, and eventually it will come. So with all this intense energy, all this tension that's happening around this new moon, new beginnings and big endings, Nadia says there's one saving grace, and that's a Scorpio-Saturn trine, which brings with it a healthy sense of things being measured. So this is understanding that if we're patient, we can make greater gains than being a bull in a china shop that's on fire. So think about how you might practice healthy self-respect and self-love while you strive to make changes in your writing practice that you want. And if this isn't about your practice in general, maybe it's about the way you are approaching a novel or a short story that you're working on. Measured patience, not bull in a china shop on fire. So if you have felt stuck in any way, what is it you need to do to work through that stuck point, work around it, under it, over it? Get creative and think about other ways while you're practicing patience. Nadia also cautions that there's something very alluring about this opposition. It can really draw us in and make us want to force our way into something or force our way through something. So just keep in mind that if a door is not opening right now, just take a deep breath, let it be, and keep doing what you're doing. Slow paced, slow and steady. So with all this happening and this energy around getting to the core of the self and of things, practices and beliefs, think about what has been your reason to write. Why have you wanted to write? And is it still the reason you want to write? Because our reasons for wanting to do things change sometimes. And like I said, while you're sorting all these things out, be really, really kind to yourself. Other planets involved in this kite in the sky are Neptune and Mercury. So, as you probably know, Mercury is about messaging, communicating, and understanding. And for us writers, I think Mercury is very important. It's also about the things we talk about, the messages we put out into the world, with our voices, with our own words in our writing. And so we really want to think about deeper messages, what is being said and what isn't. As a writer, what messages do you want to put out into the world? Do you want to write about life as it is, or life as you would like it to be? Or does that depend on the story that you're telling? And can you do both in one story or one novel? And what's the tone of your messaging? How do you want it to land on your readers, on your audience? What effect do you want to have on them? This aspect can also bring awareness around complexities. So it's about deeper truths that are playing out. And this could be in your life, and this could be in the stories that you tell. And these can be things that maybe we don't see them outright, but we sense them under the surface. So how might this apply to a story that you're working on, your protagonist? Have you really discovered how complex your protagonist is? I wrote recently, I can't remember where now, about I was 3 drafts into my novel before I realized that one of my characters, Spring, was actually a facet or another aspect of my protagonist, Miranda. And I realized that by having Spring by Miranda's side, helping her, I had really robbed Miranda of her own agency, her complexity. And so I had made her not as sympathetic as I could. So once I got rid of Spring and wove her qualities and desires and abilities into Miranda, Miranda then came more to life and the story came together far more easily than it had been. Nadia says that water is amplified under this new moon, which can bring about empathy and fear. It can bring about passion and rage, because it's all about deep, deep feelings. And if we're talking about the core, there's a lot going on in there, in all of us. We're humans. She says we can embrace this with the power of imagination. And so again, really great for writers. How can you make a difference in the world with your imagination, with your writing? How will you bring greater love and wisdom to the world with your writing? Another thing that's happening, there's a lot going on right now. Another thing that's happening on Monday following the new moon, Venus squares Saturn. So Nadia says this will be a big reality check moment Saturn is about delayed gratification. Venus is about love and prosperity. So one way Nadia says to think about this is to step back and question, do I love it? Well, love what? If we think about Venus being in part about prosperity, it's about spending and earning. Well, if we think about that in terms of spending time, do you love the way you're spending your time? Do you love who you're spending it with? Do you love what you're focusing on in your thoughts and your beliefs? If the answer is no, is it something you can phase out? So basically, how can you clear the energetic noise around you to make room for your writing practice? So that's it for this new moon in Scorpio, lovely writers. Thank you for being here. If you want to write but it isn't happening, check the link in my description for my free first steps, how to conjure and nurture your writing practice. And if you want to be part of a quiet community of creatives who embrace the power of story to heal, consider joining my Alchemy of Writing membership group and get the free Alchemy of Writing course before the price goes up in about a week or two. As always, I send you mad writing mojo. Happy writing!